My story working at the shopping center. My story of working at the supermarket was like Cinderella in a way, because of the way I was outcast by work colleagues and used to pick up the slack while they stood around gossiping. Every job I've ever worked at, in my past life, the work colleagues made me do all the cleaning and gross jobs, which was unfair. At the supermarket company that I worked at for 9 years, which I also transferred store during that time working with the company when I moved to Victoria with my ex, at both supermarkets working for them, I was made to do all the rubbish, cleaning, front-end jobs and pretty much everything involved with working in the front-end service department. Even in other departments too, they would all make me do all the jobs while they relaxed. I had to do all the gross and strenuous jobs. Every supervisor in every department bullied me by putting me down no matter how great I was and didn't send me on my breaks. They made me do everything while they stood around wasting time with other lazy co-workers, who also got paid more than me too. Supervisors and co-workers took credit for my hard work when the area manager came to visit. They told the managers that they got everything done when I was the one doing all the hard work. I remember that happening at both stores. It was like a pattern that repeated itself. People took advantage of my work ethic and pushed me to the limit. There were a few times the store managers would talk to my supervisors about offering me a new position. The supervisor sabotaged my opportunities because they didn't want to start doing some real hard work if I left the department. They put me down saying I wouldn't be a good fit for the other opportunities. I found out through gossip and felt so angry. That happened a few times for different positions I could have been given. There were a few times I would send myself on my break because they would pretend to forget or make me go last after everyone else also close to the end of my shift. Some supervisors would even cross me off the breaks list to say I went on my breaks when I didn't. A few supervisors yelled at me for going on my break, but let other people go whenever they wanted. They let the other co-workers take extra long breaks too, but called my on the par system if I took an extra minute or two. What got to me emotionally is lazy co-workers became supervisors, and I never got offered to be put on as a supervisor officially, even though I had experience with everything and knew every department. Lazy people got all the promotions and everything. The department managers would also make new employees a supervisor, with full-time hours. They had no experience, and they used to ask me what to do. I wanted full-time and was asking for full-time hours for a long time, so it got on my nerves when they were promoted only a few weeks after working there. I drove home once on one of my 10-hour shifts after 9 hours, because I was working all day, and it was busy, and I was exhausted. I hadn't been sent on any of my breaks that day. I was angry, so that's why I left. They let me starve without lunch. I got yelled at by the supervisor the next day for just leaving. After that incident, that supervisor sent me on my lunch breaks, but still often didn't send me on my tea breaks. Sometimes when I was about to go on breaks, I would put my sign up. My supervisor said your break starts when the closed sign is up, but sometimes customers ignored my sign and made me scan their shopping. I missed out on my tea breaks because of that, which was frustrating. The stress from working there made me overeat, which contributed as another factor of me putting on weight. The store managers purposely put me in front-end department even though I had outstanding work ethic and loved bakery and deli. I could do every department, even the invoice and pay office. I asked the managers often if I could change departments. They kept saying they would organize something, but then never did. If I did help other departments, front end would call me back again. I improved all the departments I worked in when I was put in there. I was intelligent and had high work ethic. I worked out simpler ways to do tasks, and how to order things so the shelves were never empty. At the second store after transferring, one time I cut my arm on the customer bin outside the store, because it was dangerous and awkward to change liners without hurting yourself. The supervisor didn't even care. She still made me do bins every single shift and didn't share the workload around fairly. She was the type of girl that would cry if she got a splinter. She loved hanging with the lazy co-workers at the front desk watching me do all the work. They had breaks together too, which you're not meant to do, because we only had a certain number of staff on to serve customers. I used to get threats from customers all the time at both stores I worked at for that company. I was just doing my job, and a lot of customers hated me and took out their anger on me. I could write another whole book on all the verbal abuse I got from customers in the workplace. That's how bad it was. In the first few years of working for the company, I used to get upset and shocked when customers would be verbally abusive. Then I got used to it. Which is sad to say, but true. I became resilient, but it also damaged my view on humanity. I thought people were horrible creatures. One bad experience I had with a customer was one time I put bread on top of his eggs. That's how I was trained to pack shopping. The customer waited for me outside for when I finished my shift and threatened to kill me. A week later he got calmer though. He got stabbed, but he survived. He learned his lesson, I guess. The first store I was at with the company was in a rural town with a large population of multicultural people, which I mentioned before. There were a handful of people that were nice, but people got bored in that town. There was nothing to do or anything close by either, just more secluded rural towns. It was hot there as well, so the heat made people angry. What people did in that town to pass time and help with boredom was to get drunk and take drugs. They came to the store causing trouble and being abusive. A lot of them didn't give eye contact or even say hello while coming through the register because in their culture, they are the only people that matter. One day I got so sick and tired of one lady coming into the store stealing and walking out with bags of meat, hair dye, electronics, and vitamins that I asked to check her handbag. She started yelling at me, then I screamed at her to get the F-sharp CK out and never come back. I was so scared I would get fired, but nothing happened luckily. One time the same lady told me to stick my hand in her handbag with used needles because I asked to check it. I've had so many similar experiences where I got abused for asking to check people's bags. I got called all kinds of things, and some of them made a huge scene and got the manager involved, which nothing got resolved from, so it was a waste of time for everyone. I used to witness thieves stealing every day. It made me so angry and stressed out in the first few years seeing it happening. The thieves literally just walked out the door with full bags of stolen goods. The stores used to lose $6,000 to $10,000 a week in theft. That was back then, so it's probably a lot worse now, which the company claimed with insurance anyway. The good customers used to get mad seeing the theft happen because they were spending their hard-earned money to buy their shopping, so they felt it wasn't fair and that we should somehow stop the theft. A few times I chased customers down the street. I was the one who got in trouble. I chased a few customers down at both stores. They got away and didn't get caught. I was just mad because the security guards were useless, just sitting around, and police always dropped cases. So, the customers kept coming back and stealing even if they were banned from the store. We were not meant to do anything about it, especially if they were of a cultural background. The thieves would use the racist card against us quite a lot when we confronted them. One method the thieves would try is loading up 3 trollers and taking the first 2 trollers to their car, and when it came time to pay, they ran off and didn't pay. They were smart and cunning. The supervisors did nothing about the theft, but if I didn't tell the supervisors of the customers that were stealing and just let them steal, then I would get lectured on how we are meant to check bags. So, whatever I did, I was in the wrong. Towards the last few years working there, thieves would steal, and I shrugged it off and kept my inner peace. If I checked bags and got abused or threatened by customers, supervisors didn't back me up. They just expected me to get on with it and to keep accepting more abuse. I stopped asking to check bags, and only did it if the supervisor told me to. I would only ask a few customers until the supervisor became busy or forgot. Near the end of my 9 years employment with the company, 3 months before I left, I stood up for myself and said no to doing the bins and cleaning that I had been doing for the whole 9 years, because lazy co-workers would just stand around and I had enough. I got to a point where I didn't care. I was checked out emotionally and physically. I had to keep saying, no, I won't do the front-end jobs, because they were still manipulating me into doing the jobs. They literally all turned against me, giving me evil eyes, because they had to do some actual work and clean up rubbish, put mats up and clean the registers. Same in the deli. I made sure that I wasn't the one doing everything by myself anymore. I started doing the bare minimum and left on time even if things were not finished. It felt good watching other people do some work for once. They gave me the evils while doing rubbish and cleaning by staring me down. They would complain too. I was thinking in my head, now you all know what it's like to do some work. They would be passive-aggressive and take way too long to do one simple job, and purposely miss bins, and not clean properly. They were all angry and resented me. One colleague took one bin at a time to the back to empty the bins, just because they were having a tantrum. They were trying to make me cave into their manipulation, and trying to make the supervisor think that they couldn't do the tasks, so that the supervisor would make me do the jobs again. They treated me the same way with all the front jobs, the drinks cages, putting stock back on shelves and filling front-end confectionery. Front-end would also make me do the drinks cages every time I was working. Other staff would fill the drinks wrong, and I would get blamed. Also, I always had bust my back trying to fix their mistakes. The other staff who filled drinks left a mess out the back and the cages were unorganized. The staff would also leave all the new drinks out the back and not fill them because they waited for me to do it. Some staff would just take a basket and grab a few drinks to fill the front fridges, which was a waste of time. It was double handling as well. The supervisors filled the drink fridges sometimes, but were so lazy about it they put any drinks in the wrong spot, creating more work for me. Instead of adjusting counts for empty spots, they would just flip the ticket over and put random drinks in its spot. The thing which made me mad is the missing drinks were usually out the back on a cage. They were just lazy and didn't want to do some manual labor to get them. They probably didn't want to break a nail, lazy and weak princesses. Even the guys were just as bad though. When I eventually did get deli shifts, front end had the audacity to make me leave deli and serve customers every shift, even though there were front end staff standing around gossiping or hiding at the end registers with the light off. I ended up ignoring their calls over the PAR system. I got so sick of their mind games. When I did help front end out, I would put my close sign up, turn off my light, and customers kept coming to my register. The supervisors were sending them to me on purpose. Once I had my sign up and the customers unloaded, I just walked off and went back to deli because there were empty registers with employees waiting, acting like they were shut. The employees even put trolleys near their registers to look shut, so that I would have to serve. More about the shopping center, pandemic, and finally leaving. During the first wave of COVID, I copped the most verbal abuse from customers and staff I've ever experienced. There was intense anger and fear in the air. I couldn't believe that people turned into wild, greedy animals fighting over toilet paper, pasta, flour, rice, yeast, and canned veggies. I literally had to just take stuff from people's trolleys if they were going over the limit, while they weren't looking. I couldn't deal with any more abuse and confrontation. I suffered panic attacks, and I didn't want to trigger an attack. That's why I tried to keep inner peace by taking over limit items when customers weren't aware. Also, during the first lockdown, I had a lot more shifts and copped more abuse from customers and rude staff because of the number of hours I spent there. I didn't have any fear in the pandemic. I knew things would get better, and I trusted God to provide for me if I ran out of anything. I didn't become desperate like most people. I stayed in a good and stable energy. During the first pandemic, there was a worldwide mask shortage, and at that time I was learning how to sew, because I wanted to make an online handmade clothing business. I started making masks and selling them to staff and customers. I made about $2,000 profit from masks, but it was a lot of hard work. It was time-consuming. The manager at the retail store got me to make bundles of masks that he could give to co-workers. He bought me a hair straightener and a Fitbit watch using the store credit card as a payment for the masks. He kept putting off rewarding me though because he didn't want me to have anything for my hard work. He wanted to use me and get free masks. I'm glad by then I knew how to stand up for myself and kept asking for the straightener and watch. He also kept avoiding me from guilt, so he had to buy the items so that he could come to work without avoiding me. When I finally got the watch and straightener, I was so proud. I was happy that I could help the community by sewing masks. I also came up with the best method for the most comfortable fit ever. I sold masks to customers too. It was a short-lived business success due to supply and demand. On my last day working at the company, it was time for me to go home, and the lazy supervisor ignored me. He was so disorganized with staff, it's unbelievable. I just didn't understand how he was put in that position. He had no time management skills or anything. My last shift was in self-serve, and I ended up putting my coat up on the hanger and walking away to sign off. He tried calling me back, but I kept walking. He used to be mean towards me and made me be in self-serve for my whole shifts, just walking in circles. And I had to ask to go on my breaks because he forgot about me. We were meant to get rotated every 2 or 3 hours with another staff member. That OHS rule didn't apply to him. A few times I felt like fainting because I had no mat to stand on and was constantly walking in circles. In the last couple of months while working at there, I had a few deli shifts, which I was grateful for because I hated front end. The bad thing is the deli got a new department manager, and she was a narcissist bully. She was the evilest woman I have ever met in my past life. The new deli manager used to grab me by the shoulder, throw me into the cool room, and tell me to start sweeping. Also, she would undo everything I just wrapped and make me redo it for no reason. She would hover around me analyzing everything I was doing, trying to put me down and make me cry. She told me to do 3 things at once and set unachievable expectations for me to complete in a short amount of time, which was unrealistic. Then she would ask why it wasn't all done. Also, she would just put me on the roster for deli and not tell me, then yell at me for not coming to my shift to make me look bad. Sometimes she rostered me on without telling front end, and they had fights between each other because of the bad rostering. Once I was finishing up my shift on front end ready to go home after a long day, she yells, "You're in deli now for 2 hours, okay? Didn't you know that?" I said, "No, I'm not. I'm going home." Then she glares at me and complains to management that I'm not doing the shift, and that I'm causing trouble, and that no one will be in deli to close it. She's the manager. She should stay back and close deli. I ended up not doing it. She took it out on me the next day in deli, being rude to me in front of customers too. All I could think was, I hope I find a new job. Going back a bit, there was a time in the deli when I did get more shifts, when we had our previous deli manager. While I was in that department, a co-worker I worked with was talking nasty things about a front-end co-worker. She was nice to her face right in front of me, so I let the other co-worker know what she was saying and how she was mocking her behind her back. I learned fast not to ever let someone know that another person is mocking them behind their back, because they ended up ganging up against me, and they became even closer friends. I became their enemy. The next day after I let the front-end co-worker know what the deli co-worker was doing, the co-worker in the deli sent me a whole page message abusing me for exposing her behavior. She blocked me on social media, and she tried to get me fired too by complaining to my boss, but it backfired because the manager didn't really care. Petty front-end co-workers. The front-end co-workers were jealous of me because I would talk to men in other departments. I got along better with guys. The co-workers bullied me and excluded me. One example of supervisors bullying me is once I wore black leggings, because it's dress code. I got warned by the front-end manager not to wear them, even though it was uniform. I looked good wearing them and men were looking at me, that's why, so she felt jealous. She let everyone else wear black leggings, even short skirts, but she wouldn't let me. Even she wore leggings because she was a hypocrite. When there were promotional advertising happening, the store got given boxes of t-shirts with the promotion printed on them. All the front-end women would take all the small sizes and share with each other, hiding any left over from me. They were greedy, taking more than they need to. They wanted me to miss out. I cried my eyes out every time that happened because it happened a few times. I brought home a 5XL t-shirt and sewed it to fit me because I learned to sew. The girls frowned upon me. They didn't want me to be included. A few times my old roommate brought a t-shirt home in my size. He told the front-end girls that it was for him. I thought that was nice of him. He had a nice side to him, but also a manipulative side. I would always be the first to start talking to new guy co-worker because I liked being social. Men were nicer to work with too. Women co-workers would see me talking to the new guys and eventually they built up confidence to talk to them too. They didn't like me talking to them and would even come up to me and stop me by telling me to do something, and then they would overtake our conversation. One new guy who used to talk to me would walk back to the front end with me after we finished our break. A co-worker would copy me and walk with him back to the front with him too. She felt like I was competition, even though I didn't like him in a romantic way. She fell in love with that guy and so I became her enemy. She thought I was stealing him off her. All the women in the store ended up hating me after a while, even the ones I thought were on my side and liked me. One of them I thought were trustworthy, but it turned out they were one of the co-workers to sabotage me having a promotion or new position. I thought we got along because we trauma bonded. She had a narcissistic mother too, and we used to tell stories when it wasn't busy. Second and third wave pandemic at the supermarket, and moving to the other side of Melbourne. In the last pandemic, the government started taking jobs away from people that were unvaccinated for a virus. I decided to keep working for as long as I could without getting vaccinated, and before they mandated the vaccines. I ended up getting threatened by human resources, if I didn't quit, that I would be fired. So, I wasn't allowed to work there anymore. I took a whole month off until my leave was used up, then finally handed in my resignation, and got my payout, long service leave pay, which I had to use to move to the other side of Melbourne and survive off of for a bit. I had to move because I was no longer welcome at my roommate's house. He got very cold, and he said he was selling up his house. He didn't end up selling his house, by the way. I talk more about the ex-roommate in the next chapter.